Chapter 1044. Anson furrowed his brows as he stared at the stubborn orcs. In his mind, only dwarves would be as stubborn and smelly as bricks in a latrine. Orcs, on the other hand, were the epitome of recklessness, stupidity, and smart. To them, betrayal was as easy as eating or drinking. But if one day the half-beastmen became as tenacious as the dwarves, then it would be a terrible disaster. Only those who were powerful and extremely evil could make the half-beastmen give up everything they had. Head Commander Arlen cruelly broke the captive's ankles, knees, and thighs. He then broke every finger. To his surprise, the captive still had no intention of speaking. Head Commander Arlen sucked in a breath of cold air and cursed under his breath. "Damn it! I think we're in big trouble." "Yes, we're in big trouble. Big trouble," Head Commander Arabin repeated with a gloomy face. According to the laws of Linton City, only head commanders and head knights had the right to lead an army independently. Therefore, none of them were idiot. Even if they were lacking in strategy, they were not bad at tactics. It was easy for them to judge the severity of the situation. Anson rubbed the space between his eyebrows and said in a low voice, "Sir Andre, please tell us everything you know. Now is the time to put aside the conflict between the Association of Sorcerers and the Order of Knights, and work together to resist the enemy. Otherwise, our beautiful city will suffer a terrible disaster." "I know. That's why I called all of you here tonight. I didn't want to wait for the Council's permission to meet you tomorrow. I need your support, and I need to gather all the armed forces in this city, including those adventurers who don't like to follow the rules. I can tell you clearly that this will be an unprecedented challenge. If we fail, we will all fall into the abyss and become food for the demons. Don't think that I'm exaggerating. Our enemies are less than 3 days away from Linton City. Although I've made some small preparations, I can't guarantee how long Count Karl's castle will last. Now, please make a choice. Will you support me as the commander of the army, or will you continue to observe until the terrifying monster army reaches the city?" Andre purposely exaggerated in order to consolidate power as quickly as possible. He described the enemy as rare and unparalleled. However, in his heart, he only needed to cast a few large-scale cloud of death spells to kill tens of thousands of these cannon fodders. In just a few days, this seemingly ferocious army would be reduced to a pile of lifeless corpses. What he really cared about was the summoning ritual that might be hidden in every corner of the city. However, if he wanted to find these places, he first needed to have enough authority and manpower. Chief Knight Anson hesitated again. The head commanders were also hesitating. They were not idiot. They knew very well what it meant to hand over the rights in their hand. It meant that the tradition of restricting rights and implementing aristocratic republicanism since the establishment of Linton City would instantly fall apart. Just as Andre had mentioned in the Parliament not long ago, when military and political power were completely concentrated in the hands of a single person, that person would naturally become a dictator, whether or not that person was willing. Just like the most famous dictator of ancient Rome, Gaius Julius Caesar. He was originally a prodigal who mingled in the upper class, but as his power increased bit by bit, he not only arbitrarily changed the law, suppressed the Senate, and destroyed the roots of the Roman Republic. He even laid a solid foundation for the future dictatorship of the Roman Empire. No one was willing to live under the control of a dictator, no matter if they were nobles or commoners. This meant that their wealth, dignity, status, and life would all lack the protection that they deserve. However, the current situation left the few knights with no choice. They also understood that if they didn't gather their full strength, it would be impossible for them to defend against tens of thousands of monsters with only a few thousand city guards and knights. The huge difference in numbers couldn't be made up for by quality alone. Moreover, it had always been the mages who played the leading role in resisting the invasion of monsters. If it weren't for powerful spells and the support of the tower's daily accumulation of energy, the city wall alone wouldn't have lasted until today. After a long silence, Anson finally took a deep breath, raised his head, and said, "Sir, please give me a guarantee. As long as you swear that you will hand over the rights in your hands after this crisis is over, we are willing to listen to your orders." It had to be said that this method of deceiving oneself was just to find an excuse for himself to hand over the rights, or to seek psychological comfort. Everyone on the continent understood that ordinary oaths had no binding force, unless the name of a god, devil, demon, or powerful otherworldly creature was added in front of the oaths. In short, there had to be a strong supervisor responsible for punishing those who didn't fulfill the oath. "I swear in the name of the Prince of Fire Elements, Aesop Desser, that when the enemy is defeated and the crisis is completely resolved, I will give up all my rights and leave this city." Andrei didn't hesitate at all, directly fulfilling the other's wish. As time passed, he felt more and more that there was a force calling out to him in the distant north, so he couldn't wait to go back. But the problem was that he had to settle the grudge between him and Loretta before he left, leaving a stable environment for those he cared about. Anson was very surprised, as if he couldn't believe his ears. "Sir, you really intend to leave?" Andrei nodded gently. "Yes, but I have to wait until the surrounding situation is completely stabilized, so you don't have to worry about me becoming a dictator, and I don't need any position or title. Just the position of president of the Association of Mages is enough." "Your selflessness makes me ashamed." Anson hurriedly stood up and bowed respectfully. No, it's okay. You are just doing your duty, that's all." Andrei smiled and waved his hand, indicating that he didn't care at all. But in his heart, he had already labeled this chief knight as someone who couldn't be bought. Once he had the power, he would immediately kick him out of the circle of power. The reason was simple. This guy's influence in the army was too great. Every knight captain present was consciously or unconsciously paying attention to his attitude. For anyone in power, this was a dangerous signal. Chapter 1045. At the first glimmer of dawn, the entrance of the Lincoln City Council was filled with carriages with nobles' insignia. A large number of fully armed knights were guarding the entrance, vigilantly watching everyone who approached. The city defense army had been gathered in the middle of the night and stationed in several barracks. As soon as the order was given, they would immediately head to the battlefield. With such an unusual move, even an idiot could smell the danger, not to mention that this was the second meeting held after the new year. It had been less than half a month since the last meeting. Whether it was the frequency or the number of meetings, they all revealed the momentum of a storm, causing people to involuntarily feel nervous and fearful. The chief knight, Anson, did not choose to enter the council hall to express his opinion today. Instead, he stood at the entrance in full armor. Under the contrast of the shining silver armor, he was like a sculpture, not moving for an entire hour. Not far away, his beloved heavy warhorse was also wearing a harness, silently waiting for its master's orders. Suddenly, the tightly shut door was pushed open. A woman wearing a straight breastplate walked out from inside. She was none other than Anastasia, who had recently been conferred the title of Duchess. The Duchess raised the parchment in her hand and announced loudly, "Knights, soldiers, and the citizens of Lincoln City, I have an important news to tell you. Just last night, a group of terrifying monsters from the border forest attacked the territory of our neighbor, Count Karl. There are many of them, at least 100,000 of them, including goblins, kobolds, orcs, ogres, and even more terrifying trolls and giants. That's right. Those barbaric, greedy, and incomparably cruel monsters have once again launched an attack on the civilized world. We can't just sit here and wait for death. According to the intense discussion in the council, we have decided to take the lead in launching an attack this time. We will keep the enemies out of our homes and prevent them from destroying any farms or manors. Similarly, we will not allow them to appear under the city walls. War. This is a war of life and death. We must protect our homes. We must protect the city that we rely on for survival. Protect the beautiful farms outside the city. Evil will be destroyed. Justice will prevail." As Anastasia's impassioned voice reverberated in the square, everyone present was infected, especially the knights who had already heard the news. They immediately drew their weapons and shouted in response, excitement and anticipation appearing on their faces. After all, to them, only war could show their worth, and only then could they gain enough merits to attract the attention of the noblewomen. Seeing that the morale had been raised, the chief knight, Anson, immediately took off his helmet and quickly stepped forward, kneeling on one knee. Anastasia took a ceremonial sword made of pure gold from the hands of the attendant beside her, lightly placing it on his shoulder, asking very seriously, "Anson, is your sword still sharp?" "Yes, your grace, my sword is still sharp. It can drink the enemy's blood to its heart's content." Anson drew his long sword and cut his palm. "Anson of the Night, can you lead us to defeat the enemy?" Anastasia asked again. Anson raised his bleeding hand and yelled, "Yes, I can. I will make those barbaric monsters blood." "Very good. On behalf of the council, I now bestow upon you the title of General. From now on, you have the authority to mobilize all military forces, including the city guards, the knights, and the private armies of the nobles, to resist the enemy who is about to attack us." With that said, Anastasia put away her golden sword and put the parchment with dozens of seals on it into the hands of the chief knight. Anson of the Night opened it and took a look, a trace of surprise appearing on his face. He turned and secretly stared at Andrei, who was hiding behind the crowd. He almost could not believe that Leyland had not left this great authority behind, but had instead given it to him. Andrei smiled and nodded. On the surface, he looked like a selfless saint. But in reality, he had cruelly tricked the chief knight. Anson of the Night might have great power and limitless glory, but in reality, not only did he have to bear a great deal of pressure, even if he won in the end, what awaited him was not flowers, applause, or praise, but all sorts of rumors and slanders. The nobles would never allow a single knight to control all the troops in the city, let alone a living hero. So the moment the chief knight returned would be the moment his political life came to an end. Andrei did not even need to do it himself. The nobles who longed for power would swarm in and tear this poor guy to pieces. Of course, all of this would only happen after the army of monsters was defeated. Anson of the Night, who had obtained the authority, did not say a word. He led the knights and 70% of the city guards out of the city gates in a grandiose manner, heading towards Count Karl's territory. His goal was not to help his neighbors, but to enter Tue's valley and use the steep terrain there to fight the enemy to the death. Watching the large army slowly disappear outside the city gates, Andrei's lips curled up slightly. He said to Bonnie, who was hiding in the shadows behind him, "My dear, you can let your people move now. I'll give you 3 days. No matter what, you have to find the summoning circle hidden in the city. I have a premonition that Loretta will be serious soon." "No problem. I'll give you a satisfactory answer within 3 days." After saying that, Bonnie jumped into the shadows instantly and disappeared without a trace. As a smart man, Andrei was very clear about his opponent's plan. He also knew that he could not easily leave at such a time. Even if Tue's valley was captured by the monsters, he had to continue to stay in the city to monitor Loretta's every move. Not long after the army of Lincoln City set off, the castle hundreds of kilometers away finally fell. With a large number of kobolds and half-orc warriors emerging from the underground of the castle, Mant realized that the castle could no longer be defended. Without any hesitation, he directly brought Gloria and Elena with him. With Yvette in charge of opening the way, they directly broke through the enemy's blockade and fled to the land of glory. Before leaving, this insidious necromancer also detonated a few barrels of gunpowder, directly blowing up the load-bearing walls on both sides of the castle and killing hundreds of elite half-orc warriors, including Groose. It was also because of this general's death that the monsters did not have the heart to pursue. They simply cleared the battlefield and then set up camp, waiting for new orders from the rear. Chapter 1046. Master, the knights and the city guards have already left. Now, the only thing that can threaten you is the Mage Association. Do you think we can start to make some of those self-righteous idiots disappear? This way, they will start to feel threatened, and you will be able to carry out your plan smoothly. A black figure covered in a cloak knelt in front of Loretta and asked in a low voice. Loretta held his chin and looked forward as if he was thinking about something. After a full minute, he smiled and shook his head. No, now is not the time. Don't be too anxious. My vigilant opponent hasn't left yet. If you make too big of a move, he will take revenge. The black figure seemed to be a little unwilling and continued to ask, then why don't we make a move on the people around him? He seems to have a lot of concerns. We can kidnap a few of them and try to threaten him. Even if we don't succeed, we can still attract a lot of attention. Threaten? Ha 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 ha. Loratan suddenly burst into laughter without warning. You are too naive, my dear Inigo. Do you think that kidnapping women and children can distract a wise mage? Too naive. This will only anger him and make him do something unexpected and crazy. Not only will it not have any effect, but it will also hinder my plan. Then what do you think we should do? He is now in the city and has no intention of leaving. Furthermore, not long ago I discovered that the gangs in the slums were secretly inspecting the buildings. It won't be long before they discover the magic array that we have hidden. The black figure known as Inigo's voice was filled with anxiety and unease. Obviously, for some reason, he was more nervous and impatient than Loretta when it came to summoning demons. Haha, don't worry. The easiest way to deal with this kind of investigation is to find something for them to do. For example, casually set up a few magic formations to summon Dretch in the city. This will not only make them anxious, but also increase the panic of the residents. It is the best way to stall for time. Loretta was indeed an enchantment master who was proficient in spying on the minds of others. He easily came up with a solution. He clearly understood the fragile order of human society very well. Most of the time, he did not even need to personally destroy it. He only needed to sow a little seed of chaos, and it would not be long before he would reap turmoil and death. With the current tense nerves of the residents of Linton City, not to mention summoning demons, even a few fires could cause a large-scale riot in an instant. Inigo raised his head and excitedly licked his lip. As you wish, my dear master, in 2 hours at most, you will see hundreds of Dretches on the streets. Don't go overboard. Try your best to keep the casualties below 200 people, understand? Our goal is to divert attention, not to kill or injure civilians. Once too many people die, the churches of the various gods may fully intervene. Those charlatans are much better at detecting demons than mages. After saying that, the corners of Loretta's mouth curled up slightly, revealing a cold and cruel smile. Understood. Don't worry, I will control the casualties. Inigo placed one hand on his chest and bowed, then turned and disappeared into the dark tunnel. 2 hours passed in the blink of an eye because summoning the lowest level of Dretch did not require too complicated a ritual, a few braziers, a small amount of blood used to draw a magic circle, a small handful of sulfur, and a spellcaster above level 5 were enough. So Inigo quickly completed more than a dozen summoning circles in various corners of the city. A large number of ugly humanoid creatures with a height of 1.2 meters and a weight of about 80 kilograms slowly walked out of the braziers. They looked ugly and filthy, but they had sharp claws and teeth. They were like gnomes distorted by evil forces, and their bodies exuded an unbearable stench. There was no doubt that these guys were the lowest residents of the bottomless abyss, the Dretches. They were the most direct manifestation of the will of the abyss. Although they were stupid, cowardly, and easy to bully, they were full of violent and destructive nature. However, under the confinement of the anti-evil circle, the Dretches could not release this nature for the time being. They could only walk around the house and fight with their own kind from time to vent their exuberant energy. Suddenly, the green light around the confinement circle quickly dimmed, and the Dretches felt that the power on their bodies was slowly weakening. In just a few seconds it completely disappeared. Because they had no vocal organs, they could not speak. They could only communicate with each other through telepathy. After a while, they reached a consensus, that was to rush out of this dilapidated house. Without any hesitation, under the leadership of a particularly strong Dretch, they rushed into the street. "Dad, look, what is that?" A little boy of 7 or 8 years old keenly discovered these little monsters and asked his father loudly. The man of about 30 years old glanced at them, immediately picked up his son vigilantly, turned around, and ran away. Although he could not recognize that these were the demons of the bottomless abyss with his knowledge, he could distinguish the sharp claws and teeth, so he decisively chose to retreat. It had to be said that his reaction directly saved the lives of himself and his child. Just before the father and son ran 30 meters away, the first Dretch that rushed out finally launched an attack on the passers-by. It jumped and pounced on a farmer who was selling vegetables. It opened its bloody mouth and bit off the farmer's throat, greedily sucking the sweet blood. In hell, a complete soul could often create a group of Dretches, so they were not complete from the moment of birth. They could only satisfy their twisted desires by devouring blood, flesh, and souls. Only in this way could they evolve to a higher level. With the first example, the rest of the Dretches could not hold back their manic desire. They rushed into the crowd like a group of mad dogs, enjoying this gluttonous feast. After all, they were never kind and thinking creatures. Most of the time, they just followed their instincts. Once they found that the other party was not as strong as them, killing and plundering were inevitable. Ah! The monster killed people. The monster killed people. Run. Get out of the way. Don't block the way. Under the reminder of the bloody corpses, the passers-by finally woke up. While screaming loudly, they ran toward the nearest barracks and temples. In order to run faster, some of them even kicked their own kind and left them to the demons behind. The most despicable side of human nature was vividly reflected at this moment. Chapter 1047. The appearance of the Dretch caused half of the city to fall into panic and paralysis within 20 minutes. The number of people who were trampled to death was far more than the number of people who were killed and eaten. What was even more terrible was that the residents of Lincoln City no longer believed that the city defense force could protect their safety. They turned to the adventurers, the church, the private army of the nobles, and the gangs for help. For a while, the prestige of the city council plummeted, and the original order was on the verge of collapse. If someone pushed it further, the whole city would fall into the abyss and become a place full of violence and crime. As the saying went, building trust was a long and slow process, but it was very easy to destroy it. Andre was standing in the reception room on the second floor of the city council hall at the moment. He stared at the chaotic scene outside the window with a gloomy face and asked without looking back, "What's the situation outside?" "Very bad. At least hundreds of Dretches poured into the residential area. About 1/3 of the streets have been out of control. We have to temporarily block it to prevent the panic from spreading further. In addition, due to the serious shortage of manpower, we can't send people to clean them up for the time being. However, I have asked the adventurers and the church for help in the name of the city hall. I believe they should be able to help." Anastasia, who was sweating profusely, sat down on the sofa. She completely ignored the image of a noblewoman that she usually maintained. She grabbed the wine bottle and drank 2 mouthfuls of wine. The sudden disaster made her feel physically and mentally exhausted. She was no longer as shrewd and capable as she used to be. After all, she was good at aristocratic politics, not dealing with the demons that were running all over the city. especially when these demons were still killing ordinary people and using their souls as bait to summon more of their kind. Humph! What a good plan! What a good plan! It seems that you are a little impatient, my dear opponent. Andre narrowed his eyes and sneered. As the person who knew Loretta's character best in the city, he almost didn't have to think about it. He immediately knew that this must be done by Loretta. Summoning demons, even the lowest level of Dretch, required a lot of professional knowledge and the guidance of a mage above level 5. Andre really couldn't think of anyone in the entire Lincoln City other than Loretta who could do such a crazy thing. Of course, many members of the Association of Sorcerers could do it as well, but the problem was that they had all registered with the Sorcerer Tower. Even if they cast a level 0 spell, it would be recorded completely. You mean, Loretta did all this? Why would he do that? Anastasia frowned and asked. Even now, she still couldn't believe that the cultured and refined young Duke was actually plotting such a huge and evil scheme. Andre took a deep breath and explained, "Sorry, ma'am, I don't know." His way of thinking was different from ordinary people. You couldn't understand his actions in a normal way, and you couldn't predict what he would do next. What we can do now is to remain unchanged and wait patiently for him to reveal his true intentions. Anastasia was very dissatisfied with this kind of ambiguous answer. Clenching her fists, she shouted angrily, "Are we just going to let him do whatever he wants? Look outside. He's about to destroy the city. Please believe me, the current chaos is just a smoke he released to distract us. If you focus on cleaning up the Dretch, you will fall into his trap. Don't worry, as long as I control the Sorcerer Tower, he won't be able to easily destroy the city." After saying that, Andre turned around. His eyes revealed a deep gaze, like a bottomless lake, and also like a sharp blade that was about to be unsheathed. His entire body emitted a powerful aura. Anastasia was so scared that she stood up and took a few steps back. She barely stabilized her mind. "My God! You're so scary right now." Andre smiled and shook his head. "Haha, don't worry, ma'am, I'm not targeting you. I just feel a little angry and can't control my emotions. After all, even a good-tempered person can't help but get angry. I need to find a target to vent now." "Vent?" Anastasia blinked her eyes in surprise. "That's right, it's to vent, and I happen to have a good target to vent on." As he said that, Andre's face revealed a sinister smile that made him shudder. Psychologists said that unlimited suppression of emotions was a very bad habit. It would cause negative emotions to accumulate in one's heart. When it reached a certain critical point, the whole person would completely slide from one extreme to another. Therefore, venting at the right time was not only good for one's physical and mental health, but also a kind of protection for one's family and friends. Andre, who was completely enraged by his opponent, directly cast a teleportation spell and appeared above the castle that had just fallen. Under the gaze of countless eyes, he chanted a spell loudly, then raised his index finger and gently pointed at the camp of the ogres and gnolls. In an instant, a mysterious rune appeared out of thin air and then disappeared completely. Before the monsters could figure out what was going on, dozens of ogres wielding clubs and war hammers suddenly revealed a crazed look in their eyes. Without saying a word, they raised their weapons and rushed towards the location of the orc patrol team, entering into killing mode. They were like madmen, completely unafraid of death and pain. They fought with their lives on the line and killed dozens of people in the blink of an eye. The gnolls behind them were not to be outdone. They rushed into the goblin camp on the other side, crazily reaping lives. It was obvious that the rune just now was not an ordinary spell, but a genuine rank 8 arcane spell, insignia of madness. It could cause all nearby creatures to fall into a state of frenzy. Unless they were killed or had the help of a great wizard, they would never be able to wake up. However, this kind of slaughter was clearly unable to satisfy Andre's tyrannical heart. In the next 10 minutes or so, he used a rank 6 arcana spell, Chain Lightning, a rank 5 Arcana spell, Death Cloud, a rank 3 Arcana spell, Fireball. All sorts of beautiful and destructive spells fell from the sky one after another, killing the monsters until they wet their pants in terror. They had no way to resist at all. Finally, he released the specter from his ring and dragged out the souls of the unlucky ones. He used shadow energy to corrupt them, turning them into members of the Shadow Army. In less than 20 minutes, Andrei had killed a total of 15,000 goblins, 5,000 kobolds, 600 orc warriors, 800 gnolls, and a small number of ogres, trolls, and giants. All of them had been wiped out. He used his actions to demonstrate the efficiency of an advanced wizard in slaughter. There were no survivors, and no one who was lucky enough to escape. Only the trembling slaves kneeling on the ground witnessed this with their own eyes. Chapter 1048. Ha 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 ha. Wonderful. Slaughter. Death. Fear. How many years has it been since I've enjoyed such joy so happily? My dear master, please accept this small gift to express my respect and admiration for you. The specter floating in the air stretched out his claws and waved them a few times in the air, immediately gathering a cloud of black fog. In the center of the black fog was a gem emitting a faint light. It was different from any other known gem on the ground, revealing a strong shadow energy from the inside out. Andrei took it and looked at it for a while before immediately asking, "What is this?" The specter smiled and replied, "It's a ghost gem. It's filled with the souls that I've just turned into shadows. As long as you break it, you'll be able to release the painful souls inside and kill all life that can be killed in the surroundings. Of course, if you don't like them, you can use them to make a powerful magic item. In short, it's a rare treasure even in the shadow world." "You've turned all the souls into shadow creatures?" Andrei's expression changed greatly. The reason was very simple. Although these monsters were primitive and barbaric, they also had their own beliefs and gods, especially the god of goblins, Magrubia. He was an out-and-out great divine power. If he found out that a large number of his believers' souls had been intercepted, he would definitely be furious. Andrei had no intention of confronting a powerful god head-on, even though there weren't many worthy believers in the material world. Most of them were ignorant, barbaric, primitive, dirty, ugly, and cowardly ordinary goblins. The specter spread out his hands and smiled indifferently. "Haha, don't worry. I've already used shadow energy to erase all traces. Unless the gods were watching our every move, they wouldn't know who did it. Remember, the next time you do this, let me know in advance. Otherwise, I guarantee that you won't be able to enjoy it again. Do you understand?" Andrei warned in a low voice as he glared at the specter with his two sharp eyes. As a cautious person, what he hated the most was people who thought themselves clever. He couldn't tolerate his subordinates doing dangerous and crazy things. "Of course, my respected master. Your will is my command." The demonic shadow was very smart. He didn't try to defend himself and agreed honestly. Shadow creatures weren't intelligent life forms of the material world. They didn't care about etiquette at all, nor did they care about face. As long as they could obtain benefits, they wouldn't hesitate to kneel down and act subservient. Andrei naturally wouldn't believe the promise of a specter. He snorted softly and directly put it into his ring. He quickly cast a teleportation spell and returned to Linton City. As soon as he left, the group of poor people who were enslaved by the monsters carefully came out of the wood. One of the men with unkempt hair and a dirty face looked up and stared at the place where the portal had appeared. He muttered to himself, "My God! This was too terrifying. I thought he would kill us as well." A slightly older middle-aged man beside him rolled his eyes and scolded, "Idiot! Didn't you notice that he was a powerful mage? He saved us." But his magic almost killed us," the other girl reminded her cowardly. "Shut up, idiot woman. I've had enough of being enslaved by those monsters. Even if I die, it's better than continuing to work for them." The middle-aged man glared fiercely at her and roared angrily. The girl seemed to be enraged. Her eyes revealed a trace of madness. Suddenly, she pounced forward without warning and grabbed the man's neck tightly. She hysterically cursed, "Bastard! Bastard! Bastard! What right do you have to lecture me? Go to hell! Trash!" The middle-aged man wasn't to be outdone. He punched the girl's face and roared with a ferocious expression, "Bitch! How dare you? Have you forgotten who protected you from those monsters?" Due to long-term hunger, fatigue, and the threat of death, all the survivors were slightly neurotic. It was fine when the monsters suppressed them, but now that they were free, they immediately began to show it. Some people knelt on the ground and cried bitterly. Some people picked up weapons crazily and chopped the bodies of the monsters into meat paste. There were also some who stood foolishly on the spot, not knowing what to do next. The sudden conflict between a man and a woman quickly caused a chain reaction. Some people wanted to go up and pull them apart, but they were accidentally beaten up a few times. They couldn't control the anger in their hearts and joined in. In a short while, it evolved into a chaotic battle of thousands of people. In a moment, these poor people who had suffered so much completely released the suppressed emotions in their hearts. They quarreled and wrestled with each other. After more than half an hour, they were exhausted and lay down on the grass to rest. The middle-aged man gasped for breath and touched his face that was scratched with a few bloody scratches. He smiled and sighed, "Ha ha! We've finally survived, haven't we?" "Yes, I thought I was going to die." The girl was no longer as crazy as before. She was completely relaxed and enjoyed this moment of peace. "What do you plan to do next? Although we've temporarily escaped from the monsters' enslavement, we're not out of danger. Their goal is to conquer the entire surrounding area and build a country led by the half-orcs. So it won't be long before they send more people." The middle-aged man was obviously not an ordinary person. His words revealed his meticulous thinking and uncommon knowledge. The girl smiled bitterly and sighed, "Who knows? Maybe escaping to Linton City is a good choice. I heard that there are countless soldiers, knights, wizards, and priests there to protect them. They've resisted many large-scale monster invasions." The middle-aged man nodded in agreement. "You're right. I just noticed that the wizard seems to be wearing the badge of the Linton City Wizards Association on his chest. If he's a member of that powerful spellcasters organization, it shouldn't be difficult to resist the attacks of the monsters. But the question is, will Linton City accept homeless refugees like us? Then what do you think we should do?" The girl asked helplessly. "We need a greeting gift, a condition that can make them palpitate with eagerness. And this condition is now in your hands." The middle-aged man sat up as he spoke, his eyes revealing a deep gaze. "Me?" The girl did not understand what he meant. The middle-aged man smiled and pointed at the pendant on the girl's neck. "As far as I know, it's a magical item that can record everything you've experienced. As long as it's activated through a special method, you'll be able to see the images stored inside. I believe that the ruler of Linton City will be very happy to obtain this little thing that records the schemes and plans of the monsters." Chapter 1049. Just as a group of refugees staggered towards the direction of the Tues Valley, the city of Linton also became very lively. Of course, this liveliness did not refer to the prosperity of business, but to the degree of chaos. Because of the lack of manpower, Anastasia took out 100,000 gold coins in the name of the city hall and issued a bounty for the dretches who were hiding in the streets and alleys. Anyone who killed them would get 100 gold coins, and anyone who found the demon summoning circle would get 2,000 gold coins. At the same time, the Mage Association also offered a high price to buy their filthy blood to make some magic items with evil tendencies. Although this move caused dissatisfaction with many good churches, they could not go too far in the face of a powerful enemy, so they could only turn a blind eye. Under the temptation of huge benefits, a large number of adventurers would soon swarm into the place where the dretches appeared. Although they were not comparable to professional armies, they were especially good at playing their best in narrow terrains. In addition, they had been fighting with all kinds of beasts and monsters for a long time. In just half a day they killed about 60 dretches. The two adventurer teams also successfully discovered and destroyed the summoning circle. With the bounty and honor in hand, the enthusiasm of the adventurers was immediately ignited. Like locusts passing through the city, they frantically searched around the corners of the city for fear that they would not get the bounty if they were too slow. After all, this bounty mission was not in the dangerous wilderness, and there was no need to travel long distances. They only needed to walk around the city twice, and they would immediately earn a huge sum of money. They could even retreat at any time and call for backup when they encountered danger. Many people could not believe that they would encounter such a good thing in their lifetime. As the leader of an adventurer team, Alger naturally would not give up this opportunity to make a fortune. He took his trustworthy team members and plunged into the alley with the smell of blood, carefully searching for suspicious traces. Suddenly, 2 dretches covered with blood and minced meat jumped out of the darkness, trying to kill the humans in front of them with their sharp claws and teeth, and enjoy the flesh and soul of the humans in front of them. With the stupid brains of the dretches, they could not distinguish the difference between ordinary people and professionals. Kashia! Alger shouted the name of the team member. Understood. The girl at the back of the team immediately pulled her bow and shot 2 arrows at the fastest speed. Whoosh! Whoosh! The sharp arrow flew more than 10 meters in the blink of an eye, instantly piercing the ugly body of the timid demon and nailing it to the wall behind. The experienced Alger knew that he could not miss this opportunity. He immediately swung the hammer in his hand and knocked the dretch, who was less than 1.3 meters tall, to the ground. The strong dizziness made it unable to get up for a long time. The big Charlie rushed forward with a ferocious smile on his face. He raised his shield and knocked the other demon unconscious. He tied up the 2 demons skillfully and waved at his teammates behind him. Buddy, come and bleed. Remember to play it slowly. Don't let them die like the 2 in the morning. Damn it. Don't rush me. I didn't have any experience in the morning, but this time, I guarantee that I'll be able to release 3 leaders. Bill quickly ran over and inserted a metal needle made of steel into the dretch's arm. The black and smelly blood was continuously poured into the wooden bucket he carried with him. In just a few minutes, the unlucky dretch was on the verge of death due to excessive blood loss. Charlie saw that the situation was not good. He immediately took out a dagger and cut off a claw. Just as he finished this action, the dretch instantly burned itself, and the raging flames completely burned its body to ashes. The other dretch was also bled and expelled from the material world. It returned to its home in the abyss to be reborn. Obviously, this team of adventurers was none other than the few people that Andre met in the border forest. However, they were all very principled guys. They did not use this relationship to ask for benefits for themselves. Instead, they silently did what adventurers should do. Especially Bill, who had just become a mage apprentice not long ago, needed a lot of money to buy books, instruments, and magic scrolls. So far, he had only mastered a level 0 arcane spell, Frost Ray. Looking at the big bucket full of demon blood, Alger immediately laughed happily. Ha 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 ha. I'm rich. Tell me, how much can this blood sell for? Bill roughly estimated and quickly replied ecstatically, the price offered by the Mage Association is 80 gold coins per 100 milliliters. This is almost 6 liters. That was 4,800 gold coins. With this money I can go to the Mage Association to study, to learn the magical arcane spells. Maybe when you come out, we'll have to call you Master Mage. Alexia playfully blinked her eyes and teased. Steve touched the beard that had just grown on his chin and smiled. That's right. Maybe we can even meet that master. You know, I didn't even dare to dream that I would be lucky enough to meet him in this life. Sir Andre is now the president of the Mage Association, the most powerful person in Linton City. He's a living legend. Since many people knew that he was in our team, all the troubles disappeared. Even the knights are polite to me when they see me. The taxes that we have to pay have been reduced by at least half. It's all thanks to him that we can have such a good life now. If you see him, Bill, you must thank him." As soon as Andre was mentioned, Alger's face was full of emotions and even a little proud. Even though he was a person with a strong sense of self-esteem and was never willing to take the initiative to use this relationship for profit, this did not prevent him from talking about it as a precious life experience. He firmly remembered it in his heart and would tell it to his son and grandson when he was old. Bill smiled and shrugged. "No problem, I'll definitely thank him. I also want to thank him in person because he killed that executioner, Gavin Lauren." Alexia pointed at the stinking claws and asked, "Captain, where are we going next? Are we going to exchange these things for the bounty first? Or are we going to explore the place Barnard mentioned?" "I think it's better to go back first and buy a few bottles of potions and magic scrolls. After all, I'm already a mage apprentice and can activate the spells stored in the scrolls. Even if we meet an enemy that we can't beat, we can fight our way out," Bill seriously suggested. Alger thought for a few seconds and immediately nodded in agreement. "Okay. I'll listen to you. I didn't think that we could be so extravagant as to use magic potions and scrolls." Chapter 1050. The principle of adventurers had always been to do what they said. Alger led the team out of the dangerous area quickly. They first went to the place designated by the Association of Mages to sell the demon blood and bought a few magic scrolls and a small number of potions. Then, they returned to the Adventurer Tavern to collect the bounty, eat something, and rested a little. They set off again at around 2:30 in the afternoon, heading straight for the location given by Mr. Know-It-All, Barnard. Half an hour later, the group arrived at the abandoned dock area and began to explore carefully. Due to the attack and looting by the pirate Queen Grace Omer not long ago, a large number of shipbuilders had been taken away. The ships that were under construction had also been mercilessly burned. Now it was in a completely deserted state. In particular, the charred corpses that could be seen everywhere made people shudder. Other than homeless vagrants and beggars, no one was willing to come close. It was said that the nearby residents could even hear the cries and wails of ghosts at night. Suddenly, a slightly chilly sea breeze blew past. Alexia instantly shivered and cursed in a low voice. "Damn it! I hate this place. It's even scarier than the cemetery." As a girl, she was naturally more sensitive than men in some aspects. She could detect the souls wandering in the air. Although she could not observe them with her eyes like a spellcaster, it was not difficult to sense the negative energy gathered in the air. The thick-skinned Steve smiled indifferently and teased, "Aha! I didn't expect our little witch to be so timid. I remember you were quite brave when you were exploring the ruins. Why do you suddenly seem like a different person?" "Shut up. How can a blockhead like you understand the difference between the ruins and here? I dare to bet there must be a large number of souls who died unjustly in these abandoned docks. They're watching us from the surroundings. That's why I'm so nervous." Alexia gritted her teeth and defended herself. After all, any adventurer would be willing to be called a coward. Seeing that the two of them were about to quarrel, Alger hurriedly raised his hand to dissuade them. Okay, don't quarrel. According to the information given by old Barnard, many people have died in these abandoned docks. Otherwise, they would not have become a place where demons reside. Furthermore, there seemed to be something strange hidden in the depths. Perhaps it was a demon summoning circle, or perhaps it was a place where evil creatures resided in the sewers. In any case, there was nothing wrong with being careful. Also, remember, our main task is to investigate. Don't expose yourself easily. As long as you investigate the situation inside, the city hall will reward you with 5,000 gold coins. Do you understand? 5,000 gold coins. Big Charlie immediately whistled. Unbelievable! This is the first time I know that the City Hall can be so generous. In the past, they wouldn't even let go of a few copper coins intact. Hee. This isn't generosity, my friend. It's just that they really can't find enough manpower. Otherwise, the City Defense Army would have been mobilized, and it wouldn't take long for them to search the entire city. Why would they need adventurers like us? Bill sneered and exposed the City Council's pretense. After becoming a wizard apprentice, his intelligence had increased rapidly, and he was able to analyze the truth behind all kinds of information. Moreover, anyone who wasn't blind knew what was going on with the current situation in Linton City. If it weren't for the fact that the Sorcerers' Association was still strong, the ambitious people would have been tempted to make a move. Alright. Stop talking nonsense. What will become of the city is a problem for the nobles to consider. As long as we can earn money, that's fine. Now everyone keep quiet. Otherwise, we'll be in trouble if we startle the monsters inside. Alger gave everyone a warning and tiptoed into a dark tunnel. The rest of the people didn't dare to delay. They all shut their mouths and followed closely behind, entering the dark, damp, and narrow tunnel. Alexia, who was experienced in tracking, carefully observed the uneven stone walls on both sides. She quickly lowered her voice and said, "These caves were only recently opened. Pay attention to the corners of the walls. They are still very sharp, and there are no signs of erosion at all. According to my judgment, this is either the work of the sewer monsters, or someone is using this as a secret hiding place." "You mean this leads to the sewers?" Steve's expression changed drastically. As a native of Linton City, he grew up listening to the horror stories of the sewers. He knew all too well how many hair-raising monsters were hidden there. If he had a choice, he would rather enter the forest and face the goblins, kobolds, and ogres than explore the sewers. Unfortunately, Captain Alger didn't want to give up this chance to make a fortune. He lowered his head and considered for a few seconds before immediately suggesting, "Let's vote by a show of hands. You should know how dangerous the sewers are. Don't feel burdened. At most, we'll give up on the mission. After all, although gold coins are good, we need to be alive to spend them." "I think it's best to go in and take a look." Seconded. "We're all residents of Linton City. If anything happens to this city, no one will be spared. So, we have to go in and investigate." Seeing that his teammates had expressed their opinions, Steve smiled bitterly and spread his hands. "Do I have any room to refuse? Let's continue forward. Let's quickly complete the investigation and leave this damned place." Alger smiled and shook his head. He walked along the tunnel without saying a word. In order to prevent being discovered, he even extinguished the torch and relied on the weak light to determine the direction. In a short 10 minutes, they arrived at an empty cave. As there was no light in the underground world, everyone could only hold hands and rely on the sound of water droplets to determine the direction. Occasionally, a bat would fly by, which made them nervous. Fortunately, this state didn't last long. Not long after, an orange flame appeared in front of them. Alexia, who had the best stealth ability, immediately gave a signal. She sneaked over the wall alone and peeked around the corner. Suddenly, she seemed to have seen something incredible. Her entire body trembled as she turned around and shook her head, indicating for everyone to stay away. However, there was a saying that curiosity was part of human nature. The more nervous she was, the more the rest of the people wanted to see what was going on. After hesitating for a while, Alger finally couldn't overcome his curiosity. He walked forward with light steps and poked his head out to take a look. At the corner in front of them, dozens of men in black robes were raising a newborn baby high up in the air before throwing it into a cage filled with scorpions. In the blink of an eye, the baby was stung to death. Chapter 1051. Around the corner, dozens of men in black robes lifted a newborn baby up high and threw it into a cage filled with scorpions. In the blink of an eye, the baby was stung to death. "Great Secondary Abyss Lord, Taman, You are the embodiment of poison and death. Please bear with it for a while longer. It won't be long before we tear open the passage to the material world and offer this city of 100,000 people to you as a sacrifice." The man in the lead had a fanatical expression as he loudly chanted praises. He completely ignored the 20-centimeter-long scorpions tearing and devouring the baby's corpse. He was crazy and even reached his hand into the cage to touch the poisonous stinger. From the numerous wounds on his arm, it was definitely not his first time. The only thing that was incomprehensible was why he was not poisoned to death. The rest of the people also reached their hands into the cage and let the scorpions bite their arms. The intense pain was not unbearable to them. Instead, they revealed expressions of enjoyment. Alger, who was hiding in the corner, felt a chill run down his spine. He did not even need to think to know that this was definitely some kind of cult worshippers of demons. As a rational person, even though he was filled with anger at the act of killing a baby, he still forced himself to endure it. He turned around and gestured to the girl to retreat. Alexia, who couldn't bear the fear in her heart, turned around and ran back without saying a word. She didn't know if it was because she was too nervous or if it was because she was too shocked by the tragic death of the baby, but she didn't pay attention to the path under her feet. She accidentally fell to the ground and let out a scream. "Ah! Who dares to disturb the sacrificial ceremony?" The voice of the man in the lead quickly came from the depths of the cave. "Damn it! Run! Run!" Alger knew that his whereabouts were exposed. He did not care about anything else and rushed forward to pull the girl up. He called for the rest of the team to retreat. Although the people at the back did not understand what was happening in front of them, they still habitually obeyed their captain's orders and rushed into the tunnel. They had just run less than 10 meters when they immediately heard a rustling sound behind them. Bill subconsciously glanced back and was instantly scared out of his wit. Countless scorpions surged out from around the corner. There were so many of them that it was impossible to count them all, especially those tail stingers that flickered with black light. Once stung, there was absolutely no chance of survival. Behind these scorpions, there were more than 10 men in black robes. Each of them held a dagger that looked like a scorpion's tailhook. When the leader of the group discovered the intruders, he immediately shouted in ecstasy, "Catch them! I want to sacrifice their souls to Tamon. Charge! So that Tamon can come to this boring world. Let the great Tamon kill all those disgusting gods. Weak mortals! Hand over your soul obediently." A dozen cultists who were no longer in the right mind laughed maniacally as they charged behind the scorpion. Their speed was simply beyond the limits of a normal person. In fact, as long as one paid attention to their toes hidden in their robes, one would discover that their feet had become similar to arthropods. Every time they grabbed the ground, they could jump very high. In just a few seconds, they had shortened the distance to less than 3 meters. Seeing that there was no way to escape, the big Charlie turned around and raised his shield to meet them. He wanted to buy some time for his teammates to retreat, but unfortunately, he underestimated the sharpness of those strange daggers. The guy in the front slashed hard and directly cut the iron wooden shield in half. Even the breastplate made of stainless steel did not have any protective effect and was torn open. The only thing to be thankful for was that the skin was not injured. Otherwise, judging from the black smoke emitted from the dagger, it would definitely not be an ordinary wound. Because of the existence of supernatural forces, many of Aurere's weapons had a variety of attribute. Most of them could be distinguished by the naked eye. For example, fire attribute damage, the surface of the weapon would mostly have a bright red luster. Vampiric damage would be dark red. Acidic damage would be dark green. Lightning attribute would be blue or white. Positive energy would be golden. As for the color black, he didn't even need to use his brain to know that it either contained strong negative energy or some kind of terrifying curse. Anyway, no matter which it was, a normal person would definitely not be able to recover from it. Bastard! Go to hell! Realizing that the shield and armor could not protect him, Charlie shouted and raised the half-handed sword in his hand and slashed down, trying to cut his opponent in half. Ha 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 ha! Ignorant mortals! You don't understand the power that Taman gives to his followers. The cultist laughed and charged forward. He had no intention of dodging the attack, allowing the sharp blade to land on his shoulder. With a dull thud, the half-handed sword did not cut him in half. Instead, it was blocked by a layer of something that looked like armor. Charlie was stunned. He took a closer look and noticed that his opponent's shoulder was no longer made of flesh and blood. It was a hard shell like a scorpion. Even if he used all his strength, he could only cut into it by 1 centimeter. Lowly worm, fear. In front of the great Taman, your pitiful strength can't hurt me at all. The cultist seemed to enjoy the feeling of teasing his prey. He suddenly tore open his robe, revealing his half-human, half-scorpion face, especially the tail that was hidden under the loose clothes. Just a glance at it was enough to make one shudder. Cut the crap. Get rid of him quickly. Don't let the sacrificial offerings in front run away. The cultist who arrived later reminded him loudly. Although he was usually a little stupid, Charlie was never a fool. After seeing the true face of the cultist, he instantly realized that his life was about to come to an end. A carefree smile appeared on his face and he shouted at the top of his lungs, "Guys! Run! Run quickly! I'm afraid I can't buy you too much time." After saying that, Charlie rushed toward the enemy without hesitation. In just a second, the cultist used the sharp poisonous needle on his tail to pierce his heart. His life force was quickly drained and a few seconds later, he breathed his last. After witnessing the sacrifice of his teammate, Steve was immediately blinded by anger. He ignored Alger's attempts to stop him and roared as he attacked. But before he could get close, his chest was pierced by another tail and he twitched as he died. "No! Bastards! Kill them! I want to kill them!" Bill, who had always been rational, couldn't bear this pain. He quickly took out a magic scroll and loudly chanted the spell recorded on it. A few seconds later, a fireball shot out from his palm, followed by a loud bang. It directly engulfed the corpse of his teammate along with the enemy's body. Chapter 1052. Die. All of you can go to hell, bastards. Seeing the flames in front of him, Bill let out a hysterical curse. The deaths of 2 of his friends had completely made him lose his cool. There was only one thought in his mind, and that was revenge. Therefore, he did not even think twice before using the most expensive fireball spell scroll. Just as the young man was filled with anticipation and longing to see the murderer's corpse, a deadly tail stinger that was blackened by smoke suddenly emerged from the flames. It was so fast that he did not even have time to react. "Be careful!" At this critical moment, Alger suddenly pulled her from behind. The tail stinger that carried a deadly poison just missed the vital parts and pierced his calf. In the blink of an eye, the wound had turned black and green. There was no need to ask to know that he had been poisoned. As the flames gradually dissipated, the figures of the cultists were gradually revealed. Even though the fireball spell had caused quite a bit of damage to them, the carapace that covered the surface of their bodies protected their vital parts very well. Other than the parts that looked a little frightening due to the burns, it did not affect their movements at all. The only thing that was worth rejoicing was that the densely packed scorpions had been cooked alive in the flames, emitting a tempting fragrance. However, Bill definitely could not care about that now. His calf was gradually becoming numb and losing all feeling. If he did not treat it quickly, he would definitely die when the poison spread throughout his body. Without any hesitation, he quickly pulled out his long sword and slashed at the wound. In an instant, about 1 kilogram of flesh was shaved off, and the muscles around his calf were almost all cut off. Fresh blood spurted out. "Quick! Drink this!" Alger immediately opened a small bottle of medicine that shone with a dark blue light and poured it all into the young man's mouth. This was the healing medicine that the team had just bought from the temple in the morning. At that time, he had joked that he would probably never bear to use such an expensive thing in his entire life. He did not expect that he would have to use it to save his life in just a few hours. Even though it was only the lowest level of healing medicine and could not let the flesh that had been cut off grow back, stopping the bleeding was not a problem. After drinking the medicine, Alger carried Bill and ran in the direction of the city without looking back. The deaths of two of his teammates made him both sad and angry. He even had the urge to turn around and fight for his life. However, when he remembered that there were still two young people that he needed to save, he held back. "It's all my fault. It's all my fault. I caused the deaths of Charlie and Steve." Alexia cried and blamed herself as she ran. In her opinion, if she had not accidentally fallen, the team would definitely have safely retreated to a safe distance. "Stupid! Don't be silly. How can their deaths be blamed on you? It's those damned cultists." Alger was afraid that Alger's thoughts. Bill clenched his fists and said with a hateful tone that those bastards had to pay the price for their actions. "Captain, let's go find Sir Andre. He's the only one who can help us." Alger turned around and glanced at the cultists who were chasing after them. He nodded immediately. "I know. But the problem was that the cultists were too fast. At this rate, they'll catch up to us in a few minutes. Don't worry. I will create some trouble for them. All you have to do is run." As he spoke, Bill endured the pain and quickly took out a scroll from his waist pouch, activating it as quickly as possible. Instantly, a large amount of black, sticky grease covered the ground. The cultists at the front did not pay attention, and fell to the ground with a plop. They did not get up for a long time. Obviously, this was a genuine first-level spell, grease. It was also a spell that countless low-level spellcasters regarded as a godly skill. It was especially useful when used during an escape. It would definitely buy a lot of time for the enemy. "Well done. In my eyes, you're already an outstanding mage." Seeing the cultists fall, get up, fall again, and get up again, the flames of hatred in Alger's heart finally dissipated a little. As the captain of an adventure team, he was very clear that the most important thing now was to calm the emotions of the young people. Even if he could not let them walk out of their sorrow, he had to at least ensure that they would not seek death so easily. Bill was very smart, and quickly saw through Alger's plan. He took a deep breath and said coldly, "Captain, don't worry. Before I take revenge for Charlie and Steve, I will live well. No matter who caused all this, I will drag him out and let him taste pain and regret." In Orire, there might be people who dared to ignore a knight's vow of revenge, but there would definitely be no one who would dare to underestimate a mage's vow of revenge, even if the mage was only an apprentice. The reason was simple. No matter how much revenge a knight took, he would stick to his bottom line. Usually, it would not affect his family and friends. However, the scheming mages were different. Their revenge was not as intense as that of a knight, but they were more persistent. Especially when they were not strong enough, they would use 5, 10, 20, or even 50 years to plan and prepare. In the end, they would destroy everything that their enemy cherished, including money, wealth, power, status, reputation, love, family, and friendship. That's right. This was the way mages took revenge. It was full of cruelty and coldness. The whole process was a double torture, from the mind to the body. Some people even tried to escape by committing suicide, only to find that even their souls had become the other party's plaything after death. Looking at Bill's eyes filled with hatred, Alexia could not help but shiver. Her heart was quickly taken over by fear. Although she could not tell what was going on, she subconsciously felt that the youth, who was usually a little clever, had become different from before. To be precise, he had become more mature and more terrifying, harboring feelings of hatred, anger, and sadness. The group quickly passed through the streets and arrived at the noble district, in front of Andre's mansion. "Halt your steps," Who are you? What is your purpose? Before they could get close, they were stopped by the guards at the door. After all, the three of them were fully armed with unknown origins. Even an idiot would pay more attention to them, and one of them was even injured. Hello. My name is Alger. This is Alexia and Bill. We are old acquaintances with Sir Andre. He used to be in our adventuring team. Right now, I have a very important matter to report to him. Please make an exception. Saying this, Alger stuffed 2 gold coins into the other party's hands. He did not care about the minor details now, and only wanted to see them quickly. Chapter 1053. I'm sorry. His Excellency is meeting an important guest. You can't go in now. The young guard didn't even take the gold coins and rejected the request without hesitation. As a guard handpicked by Andre, he wasn't someone who could be bought over by a few gold coins. Not to mention a few gold coins, he wouldn't be moved even if a few thousand gold coins were placed in front of him. To all the nobles, the ability to guard was important, but loyalty was even more important. When selecting guards, they would usually carry out some tempting tests to ensure that every guard was a person with a firm will. They would never be corrupted by beauty, money, or status. Only by passing the tests could they gain the guard's trust. Although Andre didn't care about these things, Anastasia and Old George still followed the strictest standards and selected a dozen guards to take care of the daily security risk. After all, his personal safety was no longer his own concern, but closely related to the huge interest group. Therefore, the guard's inspection was very strict. If it was someone of unknown origin, they wouldn't even be able to enter the door. Alger wasn't a fool. He saw the guard's vigilant gaze and hurriedly said, "Your Excellency, we really have an urgent matter. We found a group of evil cultists in the abandoned dock. They seem to be performing some kind of evil ritual. 2 of my teammates have already been killed by them." Evil cultists? Hearing this, the guard's expression changed slightly. "That's right. Look at my leg." Bill pulled up his trousers and revealed his bloody calf. Although the bleeding had stopped, the wound was still there. It was even slightly black and festering, obviously the after-effects of the poison not being cleansed. Just as the guard was starting to believe their words, the intelligent golem Wally suddenly poked his head out of the garden and shouted, "Willis, are there guests?" The guard called Willis hurriedly turned around and replied, "Yes, Lord Wally. These 3 people claimed to know His Excellency Andre and said that they found traces of evil cultists and wanted to report to him personally." "Then why don't you let them in?" Wally asked in confusion. He had only been born a few months ago, and he was still as naive as a child. He could not understand the complicated relationship between interests. Looking at the golem's childlike gemstone eyes, the guard sighed helplessly and explained, "Sir Wally, first of all, I can't be sure if they are lying or not. Second, Sir Andre is now meeting several senior members of the association. I'm not sure if it's appropriate to bring a few strangers in now." As a special life form created by Andre himself, Wally had a very special status. On one hand, it had an invulnerable body, endless energy, and was loyal to its creator. For the time being, there was no possibility of it betraying its creator, and it had a lot of freedom and power. As long as it didn't tear down the entire mansion, no one would interfere. On the other hand, it was too naive and easily deceived. It was unable to take on too important a responsibility, so it could only stroll around the yard all day. Recently, it had even become obsessed with trimming the flowers and trees. "It's fine. I'm building a lawn so I can bring them in." With that, Wally threw away the scissors in its hand and quickly came to the door. Seeing that the golem had taken the initiative to stop this trouble, the young guard was happy to have some free time. He immediately nodded. "If you agree, then there's no problem." "That's great. Thank you." With permission, Wally immediately danced with joy. He quickly said to Alger, who was still a little confused, "Hello, my name is Wally. I'm an intelligent golem. Please follow me, I'll bring you in to meet your creator. But be careful, don't trample on the lawn I've just built. You know, this isn't an easy job. Hello. Alger stammered in response. As it was his first time seeing a golem, he was still in shock, especially when he saw the swords, axes, and hammers behind the golem's arms. Anyone with a little common sense would understand that this was definitely a crazy killing machine. Fortunately, Wally didn't care about this. As he walked in, he excitedly introduced the neatly arranged flowers and trees in the garden. He also shared his understanding of gardening in the past few days. It didn't take long for them to reach the entrance of the main hall. When the butler who was guarding nearby noticed them, he immediately came out to greet them and bowed respectfully. Lord Wally, may I ask who these people are? Your Excellency's guests? Yes. They have urgent matters to discuss with their creator. It's said to be related to a cult. Wally didn't know how to lie at all, so he honestly told the butler what he knew. Cult? Sir Barca was just talking about this matter. The three of you, please come with me. The butler gestured for them to enter and turned to lead the way. He obviously knew how important the cult was to Andre. He even subconsciously ignored the disgusting mud on the golem's feet. If it was any other time, he would definitely ask the golem to wash his feet clean and put on new shoes and socks before entering the house. After walking through the huge house for 5 or 6 minutes, the butler finally stopped at the door of the guest room on the second floor and lightly knocked on the door. Bang, bang, bang. Sir, there are 3 people who want to see you. Is it convenient for you now? They say that they have information about the cult. Bring them in. Andre's voice came from the other side of the door. As you wish. The butler carefully opened the door and gave the 3 people behind him a look, indicating for them to enter. Alger, who couldn't hold back his anxiety, immediately walked in. The limping Bill and the nervous Alexia followed closely behind. As soon as they entered the guest room, they immediately saw 2 people sitting on the comfortable sofa. One of them was Andre, and the other was an old mage with a white beard and hair. The 2 seemed to be discussing something. Alger? Bill? Alexia? Andre, who had an eidetic memory, immediately recognized them and stood up in surprise. Your Excellency, I didn't expect you to remember us. Alger put one hand on his chest and smiled bitterly as he bowed. Ha 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 ha. Of course I remember. How could I forget? It was you who brought me out of the forest. Otherwise, I don't know how long I would have to walk around in there. Looking at you, are you in some kind of trouble? It's okay, tell me, I can try to help. Andre laughed as he asked. Chapter 1054. Andre's friendly attitude reminded Bill of his teammates who had sacrificed themselves not long ago. His eyes reddened as he choked. Sir, Charlie is dead, and so is Steve. Dead? How did they die? Who killed them? Andre's expression changed drastically, and a dangerous aura emanated from his body. As the first group of people he met after escaping from Francis's underground base, he had always regarded them as his friends and carefully protected this friendship. He planned to wait until the situation stabilized before having a chance to gather and have a chat. But who would have thought that this wait would be forever? 2 out of the 5 of them had actually died. It's the cultists. We found a group of cultists in the abandoned dock. Their bodies were covered in hard shells, and they had venomous stingers like scorpions. Alexia cried as she recounted her nightmarish experience. As she was in a state of complete mental breakdown, she was incoherent when she described it. Fortunately, Andre's intelligence was high enough, and he quickly understood the whole process, especially the name of the demon Tamon. He had heard it himself not long after coming to Linton City, and even knew that an evil organization called Poisonous Stinger was trying to summon him to the material world. The mastermind behind it was none other than Loretta. Sir, those cultists are crazy. You can even say that they are sick. They actually threw babies into cages to let the scorpions sting them to death, and then ate them as food. Alger added, gritting his teeth. Andre took a deep breath, and turned to the old man sitting on the chair. Mage Barca, I'm very sorry, but I'm afraid we have to stop talking for now because it's time for revenge. It's all right, Sir President. I can understand your feelings, but please remember that the Association of Mages will always be your most loyal supporter. If you need anything, please be sure to let us know. I promise that no matter who dares to be your enemy, they will have a taste of the horror of a mage's wrath. Having said that, the old man stood up and gave a mage's salute. He turned and pushed open the door, disappearing at the end of the corridor. Watching the oldest member of the association leave, Andre immediately narrowed his eyes and asked in a soft voice, "Tell me, which abandoned dock are those cultists at?" Even though he spoke without a trace of anger, Bill could not help but shudder. As a mage apprentice, he knew all too well what this tone meant. It meant that something more terrifying than slaughter and death was about to happen. Alger suppressed the fear in his heart and raised his head to answer, "At dock number 3. It was the one that originally belonged to Duke Ian. Sir, can I trouble you to send my regards to those cultists before you kill them?" "No. There was no need for that. I will bring their souls back. You can greet them personally later." After saying this, Andre raised his hand and snapped his fingers. He mobilized the power of the Mage Tower and instantly disappeared. A mere second later, he traversed half of the city and appeared in the dock that was emitting a burnt smell. Following the pungent smell, he quickly found the entrance to the tunnel. With his night vision, he could clearly see a large number of scorpions that had been burned to death by the flames. There were also 2 charred corpses whose original faces could not be distinguished. There was no need to ask to know that these were definitely Charlie and Steve. Andre stepped forward and reached out to touch the corpses. He found that the souls had already left and did not linger in the material world. This meant that the 2 of them had calmly accepted their death. There was no regret or reluctance, and there was not even the slightest bit of confusion. "You guys are really carefree," Andre muttered to himself and sighed softly. After all, he had originally wanted to keep the souls of the 2 and find a chance to resurrect them in the future. After all, Orier was a world full of supernatural powers. As long as one was willing to pay the corresponding price, it was not too difficult to resurrect from the dead. However, if the dead gave up on resurrecting themselves and went to the kingdom of the gods, then if one wanted to resurrect them, not only would they need to obtain the consent of the person themselves, but they would also need to discuss with the god. Otherwise, the resurrection would not be successful. After confirming that there was no valuable information in the surroundings, Andre continued to go deeper into the tunnel. Not long after, he entered the karst cave. Before he could begin to observe the internal structure, he heard the sound of an intense quarrel not far away. "Damn it! Those adventurers have escaped. What should we do now? They will definitely bring people back. Kill. Sacrifice all the intruders to the great Taman." "Shut up. If you have any brains, you should understand. Our current strength is not enough to fight against a large-scale enemy. Especially the mages and priests. Those dogs of the gods are not worth mentioning. They have the power bestowed by the great Taman. We can kill them all." "Humph. There is something wrong with their brains." After being exposed, they did not choose to escape. Instead, they stayed here and quarreled. Andre sneered and quickly cast a few protective spells on himself. He did not hide his whereabouts and openly left the cover of the darkness. He greeted with a cold voice, "Good afternoon, Trash. I have a few small questions. If any of you can answer first, I will let you suffer less and die a quick death. First, who killed the 2 adventurers just now? Second, what is the relationship between you and Loretta? Third, where is the magic circle to summon the demon hidden in this city? Who are you?" The leader of the cultists stood up abruptly and waved his scorpion-like tail to threaten. But before he could make any substantial attack, the storage ring on Andre's right hand flashed with a red light. Then, a skeletal finger appeared in the air and gently curled. The cultists immediately began to tremble violently. After a short 1 or 2 seconds, they spat out a mouthful of black blood and fell to the ground twitching as they breathed their last. Such a strange death frightened many of the cultists. Although they were very crazy and even a little mentally abnormal, this did not mean that they were not afraid of death. Andre raised his arm and grabbed the soul that had just floated up from the corpse. He said expressionlessly, "Sorry? Wrong answer. Now your soul belongs to me. I just said that whoever can give me the answer I want first can die a quick death. But you obviously did not do that, so I have decided to imprison your soul and let you taste the torture of the soul that is 10,000 times worse than death." Chapter 1055. Generally speaking, a living being was at its weakest when it was in its soul state. At the same time, it was also at its most helpless state. No matter how powerful it was when it was alive, at this moment, it would be a body of consciousness formed by a strange substance. Not to mention a mage with powerful supernatural powers, even an ordinary person holding a torch would feel unbearable pain. Unless one had a strong obsession or resentment and turned himself into a spirit of negative energy, it was impossible to resist. Of course, with Andre's current level as a mage, he would not allow the cultist to absorb negative energy. He directly used a spell to isolate all energy, and at the same time, tore the soul apart crazily. In just a few seconds, the dead cultist let out a silent scream. His silver translucent soul was constantly flickering and trembling. His expression was distorted, as if he was enduring some kind of cruel punishment. No matter how hard he struggled, he could not be relieved. Andre showed his cruelty while torturing the cultist. He said to the rest of the cultists, "I believe you all already know the rules. Now I'll repeat the questions. First, who killed the 2 adventurers just now? Second, what's the relationship between you and Loretta? Third, where is the magic circle to summon the devil hidden in this city?" "Him. It's the man in your hands. He killed the 2 adventurers." One of the cultists finally could not withstand the fear of death, and shouted while pointing at the soul of his companions. As a worshipper of the devil, he might not be too afraid of death, but he was afraid that his soul would be imprisoned by the enemy and be subjected to endless cruel torture day after day. "Very good. This is a good start. I promise you that your death will be a little more pleasant. Who else is willing to answer the remaining 2 questions? You must know that the opportunity is limited. Only the first to answer will be pardoned." Andre glanced at the rest of the cultists. His eyes were full of threat. Gulp. The cultists, who were clamoring to sacrifice all the intruders to Taman a few minutes ago, all swallowed their saliva subconsciously. They looked at each other, and no one dared to make a sound, let alone launch an attack. After all, they weren't fools. They knew what kind of spell that skeleton-shaped finger was. It was the famous 7th-level necromancy spell, Finger of Death. This spell didn't target the physical body, but the soul. It could forcefully separate the soul from the physical body and cause death. Even if the separation failed, it could still cause great damage to the target. As the saying went, evil people would be dealt with by evil people. When a group of demon worshippers who took pleasure in slaughtering the weak met an angry, powerful mage, the only thing they could do was pray. The corners of Andre's mouth curled up slightly as he observed these silent fellows. He suddenly raised his staff and shot out a rank 3 arcane spell, Flame Arrow, directly hitting the face of one of the unlucky fellows. Ah! The scorching flames instantly began to burn fiercely, burning his entire face beyond recognition, and miserable screams could be heard incessantly. "This is just a warning. I'll give you a minute to think. If no one answers my question after a minute, I don't mind killing all of you and slowly torturing your souls. I don't believe that trash like you can hold on for long after being tortured day and night." Maybe a week? Maybe a year? Maybe 10 years? No problem, I have plenty of time. In order to increase the intimidation effect, Andrei purposely stepped on the head of the unlucky cultist, ruthlessly stomping his face into the mud. With the support of the dragon's strength spell on his staff, his strength attribute was no worse than a professional warrior's. It was impossible for the weak cervical vertebrae to hold on. After a few seconds, the sound of bones breaking could be heard. Crack! Accompanied by a crisp sound, the cultist's neck was bent at a 90-degree angle. There was no need to ask to know that he wouldn't survive. Without any hesitation, Andrei waved his wrist and quickly extracted the soul, placing it together with the person he killed earlier. After doing all this, he kicked the corpse to the side like a butcher who had taken thousands of lives. There wasn't a trace of emotion on his face that a normal person should have. He was so cold that it made people's hair stand on end. His eyes were full of contempt for life. 1 minute is up. Andrei suddenly raised his head, a cruel smile appearing on his face. Is anyone willing to answer my question? If not. Speaking of this, he deliberately dragged out his voice and opened his right hand to show his incomparable control over fire. A small ball of golden flame kept changing in the palm of his hand. Sometimes it was an animal, sometimes it was a human. No matter which form it took, it was vivid and lifelike. However, in the eyes of the cultists, this flame was about to bring them pain and death. Although their shells had a certain degree of fire resistance, they couldn't withstand long-term burning. Even if the outer shell was fine, the fragile internal organs inside would be cooked alive. A young man who looked only 24 years old couldn't suppress the fear in his heart. He jumped out and shouted, "Loretta is the chosen one personally appointed by Taman. He is the leader of our poisonous tailhook. As for the location of the summoning magic circle, it's at..." Before he could finish, another cultist raised a strangely shaped dagger and stabbed it into the back of his head from the back. He roared in a fanatical tone, "Die! Traitor! The great Taman will come to this world." As soon as he finished speaking, he pulled out the dagger and stabbed it into his chest. In the blink of an eye, the evil black fog swallowed the souls of the two cultists and turned them into some kind of evil energy that was absorbed by the blood-stained dagger. Obviously, this guy was a true fanatic. He would rather have his soul completely disappear from the world than reveal even a little bit of the secret. Perhaps stimulated by the example, the rest of the cultists also showed a strong desire to commit suicide. Andrei instantly realized that ordinary threats seemed to have limited effect on these people with abnormal mind. He quickly chanted a spell and cast Berserk Charm on one of them. Under the control of the powerful spell, this guy's mind was quickly controlled. But for some reason, he kept hesitating and struggling. After a while, he finally opened his mouth and stammered, "Summon. Summon, summoning circle. It's right below the Church of the Goddess of Dawn." Loretta used a spell to cover the evil breath. Bang. With a loud bang, the head of the charmed cultist exploded like a rotten watermelon. Red and white brain matter splattered everywhere, especially the two bloody eyeballs, which almost hit Andrei's face.